This show is supported by you. Stick around till the ad break to hear more about that and other exciting things. This is Cup of Go for January 31st, 2025. Keep up to date with the important happenings in the Go community in about 15 minutes per week. I'm Shai Ahmad.
I'm Jonathan Hall.
And our first interview for 2025 is up.
Yay!
We have a pretty cool show, a lot of proposals to chew through, and an interview with Anton of the famous interactive release notes.
Yes.
Which I'm excited about. It went pretty well. We were doing the magic of editing thing where we already did the interview.
We already did the interview. We did.
How have you been?
I'm pretty good. We're buying a house in 3 weeks. We just finished the inspection and all that stuff. Asked for a little bit of extra money to help replace the roof. The buyers agreed, so we're doing well.
Replace the roof?
Yeah, it's got an old roof. Buyers are going to help pay. The sellers are going to help pay for half of the roof replacement.
Nice. So are you replacing half the roof or replacing the entire
We'll
roof?
replace the bottom half.
That's the important part.
Yeah, I want to put some solar panels on pretty soon, so we want to get the roof replaced first, of course.
Nice. That sounds prudent. I just placed a ton of solar panels on my Factorio planet, and these work pretty well. They're very important, especially in Gleba.
Maybe I should have you come put some on my planet, on my house.
Yeah, I don't
whatever.
know, maybe.
Well, we're going to be talking about a lot of proposals, which excites me because I love proposals. It's one of my favorite parts of the show. I don't know. I like the forward looking into the future, telling what cool things Go's going to have later on.
Yeah, what later on we'll discuss what excites you about modern Go.
Yes.
Let's talk about runtime trace flight recording.
Yeah.
Just the name of that proposal sounds good.
It does. It sounds really, I don't know, high tech or something. So the Java developers among us are probably already familiar with Java's flight recorder capabilities. Go's going to be getting something similar.
What is a flight recorder?
Yeah, what is a flight recorder? So this proposal is a little bit old. Well, it's not that old. It's 2023 September, almost 2 years old. So the idea is sometimes something interesting happens in your program. By interesting, I mean like something probably unexpected. Could be a bug or just some unexpected behavior, and you want to maybe debug that. So you want to do some sort of tracing to see, what was happening. Pretty expensive to have tracing on all the time. It creates huge amounts of data that you probably almost certainly don't need most of the time. So maybe if you could wait until that interesting thing happened and then get a trace, except that you never know when that interesting happened until after it happened. So the idea with flight recording is that it does this tracing for you in a circular buffer. And then when something interesting happens, you can say, okay, give me the last chunk of this buffer now. Dump that out to a file, and then I can do my investigation. So that's going to be added in probably, I'm guessing, Go 1.25. There's a fairly detailed API here in the trace package, runtime trace. I haven't looked at it in super detail. This isn't the kind of feature I think most of us are going to be using a lot, but it's really good that it's there for those times when you need it. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. I don't know when I'll use it next, but I'm glad that it will be available when I need it.
What sort of information does it write? Like, okay, so it's a circular buffer, but it's a circular buffer of what?
Yeah, that's a good question. What kind of data will it give you? It's going to give you basically the same sort of information you can already get with Go's tracing support. So how long it spends in particular Go routines or on certain functions, how many memory allocations, things like that. The main thing is that you don't have to run it in you don't have to capture all the data from your tracing to get what's valuable because of the circular buffer.
So I wonder, I just integrated Sentry into a backend just like this week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if this is good for observability companies, if it's bad for observability companies. Because if you can do flight recording, what's the point of buying Sentry or sort of these tools?
I think it's good. And I'll refer back to, I think it was the interview I did with John Bodner. I think you missed that interview, the author of one of the Go books that I like. And he was really excited about some of this. I don't know if it was this specific proposal, but he was really excited about some of the real-time tracing that Go is hoping to add. because it could make it easier to export some of that data to services like Sentry or Datadog and things like that. So I think it's probably good for them. The alternative is, in many cases, they either write the code themselves or they just can't get access to that data at all. So, I mean, I guess there's an argument to be made that now that I can get the flight recorder by myself, why would I bother with Sentry? But I think really Sentry could still make this data much more easy to consume and digest.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like integrate it with the rest of their features and whatever.
Yeah.
Generally, flight recording seems like a super useful technique. I'm really surprised. In some sense, I'm really surprised it's not implemented already. I feel like the sorts of events that trigger flight recording, are they just panics, or can you configure like, hey, write to a file whenever you want? Like, I'm trying to understand if it's a runtime thing or if it's a user thing. Like, how high up is it? Looks like it's you only have one flight recorder and only one start is allowed, at least according to the suggested API. And you can even check if it's enabled or not enabled. But I'm just wondering what sort of events might trigger it.
So I think you get to decide when to trigger it. I think you just get to call the write to when you want the data. So it's up to you to instrument that.
So you should have like a recover thing on top of all of your web server anyway, right? Because you don't want to panic to crash your web server.
Yeah.
And then in that recovery, you should also call to write to, other than doing the rest of your cleanups. Cool.
Yep.
Seems very useful. And it's been like waiting for a long time. And now it's been moved to approved.
Yay.
If you want to implement it, and at least from the comments here, it looks like they're missing some user experience. Maybe trying to use whatever like change list they have ready could be useful for this proposal. So it's a very interesting proposal, and it's been accepted. You wanted to take a look at another accepted one.
Yeah. So speaking of waiting for cool things to happen, why don't you tell us about this next one?
Okay.
As soon as I tell you to go.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, it's a proposal from 2016, which is incredible. I think what's happening here, and we might like only see it now, because there's been like a change of the guard in the proposal ownership, right? It was Russ, and now it's Austin. They might be doing like a backlog cleanup sort of thing, going through great proposals from the past. This one is, I'm not sure I 100% understand it. And it sounds from your joke that you do.
I think I do.
So
yes,
it's a race condition, right? With weight groups.
Yeah, it's a misuse of sync weight group that leads to a race condition.
Okay, so let's assume I don't have to understand the specific race condition. What's this proposal about? Like, okay, I can write code that does race conditions even in Go.
So this is about sync weight group, and the proposal isn't to change sync weight group. It's to add a vet check for one particular misuse of sync weight group. So if you've used sync weight group, I think it'll make sense to explain this over audio. You create a sync weight group, and then you call, assuming your weight group is called WG, you call WG add, typically WG add 1 for every Go routine you're going to start and then wait for. The common misuse is to call that WG add within the Go routine. You should call it before you start the Go routine. If you call it within the Go routine, there's a chance that the weight group the wait function on the weight group will return before the Go routine is actually kicked off and started doing things. So that's the potential race condition.
The main thing that surprised me here in the proposal is that it's not detectable by the race detector. Like, why wouldn't it be detected by the race detector? Isn't that the whole point of the race detector?
The race detector specifically detects data races, and this is not actually a data race. This is a case of a process finishing before a Go routine has started. So it's a different kind of race.
The interesting thing, like this is a pretty old proposal. There's a lot of discussion here. One thing I like is how it's planning to get resolved. Right? This is not a side of proposals we discuss a lot, like the implementation. But at least the way this looks here is just gonna look like the linter rule is pretty simple. It's literally going to look for the .add function call in the first line of a clause. That's it. Of a closure, I mean. It's simple to implement. It from the data they looked at. It has a 0% false positive rate, right? Even though it's not as elegant as like trying to analyze whether you did it correctly, right? It's a very, I don't want to say boneheaded, but it's like a very straightforward approach to solving the problem, which I think it's a good like 80-20 trade-off, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Or do you think like implementing these without like parsing the AST and actually trying to figure out what's the path, et cetera, all the crazy heuristics, do you think it's a good idea or not?
I think it's a good idea. I think I can think of some cases where maybe if you have Go routines calling Go routines, or you're doing something weird, you might not catch it. But I don't think that would be a false negative. I don't think you're going to get false positives I can't imagine how you would with a simple check like this. So I think it's a good thing to add.
The most fun part is Alan Donovan posting the static check analyzer and finding 57 matches, all of which are true positives for this case from like real projects like Caddy, GoToByte, and OmniScale, and like just real life projects that have this mistake. So I think that's the strongest argument out of any like squabbling you can do in the comments. Hey, I found 57 people who did this wrong exactly in the same way. We should add a linter rule. Although GoVet is like stronger than a linter rule, right? Because it comes shipped with the Go tool. It's almost as strong as a compiler error.
Almost, yeah. And I'll point out that originally this proposal was to change the API or to add to the API of the weight group type itself. People didn't like that, so but they did like the idea of adding a GoVet rule, and I think I agree that GoVet rule is probably the way to go.
Yeah. Also, the suggested API wasn't that great anyway. It was very confusing, at least for me.
Although, if you want the API that he suggested, is basically the same API as the air group has in the X air group package. So if you want that API, you can just use that instead.
Cool. So that has been accepted, and with the simple implementation, we should probably see that in 125 as well.
I expect so.
Maybe even backported. Like, why not?
That would be fancy.
Cool.
One other proposal I want to talk about. It's not actually a proposal yet. It's not tech. I guess it's still in discussion phase, but we've talked about it before, so I think it's worth bringing up. And it has reached a new milestone, and that is the new JSON v2 package. We had Josai on the show a long time ago, last year, I think, to talk about JSON v2 when the new discussion topic was created about that. The exciting benchmark is that the official proposal is in draft stage and should become an official proposal very, very soon. So we'll have a link in the show notes to the draft proposal. It's a GitHub issue on the JSON v2 experiment repo, not on the Golang Go repo, but we should be having that pop over to the Golang Go repo pretty soon as an official proposal. And then I imagine we'll have a JSON v2 pretty soon in 1.25 or maybe 1.26.
Yeah, I'm literally seeing, like, I refreshed the page. I'm seeing Daniel Marti, which we also had on the show, commenting on this right now, like 40 minutes ago, commented on. And just looking at his comments, I picked something interesting from this. By the way, like 150 lines of proposal, detailed APIs, et cetera, et cetera. This is like a proper RFC document that you can print in order to sleep on. So one interesting thing about the proposed implementation is to do it in X/JSON module, and not just in JSON v2 in the standard library. Users who are using older versions of Go can still use the v2.
Yeah,
and
I like that.
It will use type aliases to the Go standard library, so you should be good either way. Like, you don't even. I think it would really help with adoption and testing, because you don't have to wait until Go releases and RC and like get everything in one package. You can just pick, like, if you really want the JSON v2 experiment, you can just take it, right?
Yep. And to be clear, this will be a clone. The Go golang.org/x/JSON will be a clone of the standard library, not an alternative to. So you'll have both options.
Yeah, for sure. So what's the general, like, why do I need a JSON v2? What's wrong with JSON, just in general?
So I think the most compelling argument for JSON v2 is it will be much faster. Fewer memory allocations. In my opinion, the biggest weakness of the current JSON implementation is, although it appears to work on byte streams, there's an encoder and decoder that takes an IO reader or uses an IO writer, it actually reads in the entire buffer before it starts iterating through it. So you can't just send it 2 terabytes of JSON and expect it to do the right thing. It's going to read that into memory before it starts doing stuff. The new one will actually have the capability of operating on JSON streams properly, as you would expect. It has many, many other improvements, but this is the one that I think will sort of magically improve everybody's life. It'll just make JSON encoding and decoding faster and use less memory.
Cool. This sounds like a good, big project to join. Like if you wanted to,
yes.
Right? Like a deep project. If you're taking a year sabbatical in between startups or something, you plan to develop a terminal emulator, but Ghosty's already done that. Doing the JSON v2 for Go sounds like a great project to join into. All right. That does it for proposals. Let's do a quick lightning round.
Let's do it.
Lightning round. Jonathan.
Try.
We just had problems with weight groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
But channels can also be confusing. Closing channels, working with buffer channels, limiting the number of workers, not using nil channels. Confusing stuff, right?
Yeah, I agree. Channels can be confusing.
Don't you worry. Anton Zhiyanov has his new chapter of his book, The Gist of Go, Channels out. And if that name rings a bell, A, it's because he's on probably the name of this episode. And 2, because he's the interactive release notes guy. And his book is also filled with interactive examples. I think it might be the best way to learn. If you're into reading and not doing, I think it's the best way to read about Go concurrency that exists today, including official documentation, including everything. I highly recommend it. It is. You can even stick around for a few minutes and we'll get to an actual interview with him. But it was on the lightning round backlog like forever. And I was like, oh, we also talked to him today. So let me take it out of the backlog.
Well, I want to call out an article from one of our listeners, and he's been on the show before too, Jamie Tana, who wrote a little short blog post called Go 1.24's Go tool is one of the best additions to the ecosystem in years. It made it around on all the cool places, on Hacker News and Reddit, I suppose. It got a little bit of blowback. We'll put links to some of that too. But it's still, I think it's a nice overview of this new tool called Tool, the Tool. We talked about it long ago, but it's basically a way to track dependencies, Go-based dependencies that aren't compiled into your code. So if you're using, say, Open API generation or gRPC or something like that does code generation for you, or some other tool, this will help track those versions and make that easier for you.
I think it makes a lot of sense, or I should say it another way. Any other language I use has dev dependencies, right? And I develop in Python, so Poetry or UV have the dev dependencies section. And when you program in Node, you have -- save dev whenever you install a thing. So usually there's a very clear delineation between what do you install for production and what do you install for development, generation, tooling, and things like that, somewhere in the equivalent of the Go mod file. And in Go, you just don't have that. Always very surprising. And then you have to do this like weird ass Go tools file, right? Where you do tools.go and you don't have anything in there and all the imports are naked. It's like the root cause might be because it's coming out of Google and they probably have a script that installs all the tools you need, right? Because it's in a corporate setting. I had a friend who worked at Google and he said that's how it works. So I'm just basing it's like secondhand. I might be wrong. It's very clearly missing. So I'm very glad they added it. And Jamie goes into detail about like how it impacts binary sizes and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool stuff. What blowback did he get?
So one of the limitations actually you touched on is that this doesn't keep dev dependencies separate from compile dependencies. So they're all kept in the same list, which means if you have, let's use an example of a project I'm working on, one of my open source projects. It targets Go 1.17, but a couple of the tools I use depend on a newer version of Go, which means that I can't keep them in the same go.mod file. So it won't solve that particular problem for me.
I understand. So it's
still an improvement over the status quo, over the situation today.
Sure.
It's still an improvement, but it's maybe not the ideal scenario. It's maybe not the ideal improvement everybody would want.
I think it doesn't mean like that's the final version of this, right? Features in Go evolve and develop.
And something to keep in mind, you can actually specify, if you want to, a separate .mod file. So you could create a tools.mod file that you use to track your tools separately. So there is a workaround. It's just maybe not as ergonomic as maybe people want.
Yeah, I don't like having too many project management files in my root directory, and already having 2 in every programming language I work in, which is like the dependencies list and the dependencies log file, and the README, and like 100 files to configure linters. Like I'm very happy with Go projects where you have Golang CI config, Go mod, and Go lock, right? And that's it. Versus like other languages I could think about, Node, where you have like 15 files at the root of the project just to get your tools like configured and going. My final thing for the lightning round, this might not be as fast and snappy as we like for lightning round, is Dreams of Code, which I talked about last week. Came out with another banger, just a short video updating on his course that he's building. So he's building a new course, which is cool. And he's doing it. He like looked at various course platforms where he could sell the thing, right? Then he didn't like any of them, and he wrote his own, 100% in Go, like a full stack web app in Go in a stack called Goth. I forgot about the whole thing where you have LAMP stack, right? And like acronym based tech stacks. Do you know what I'm talking about? So apparently there's the Goth stack. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's Go, Temple, and HTMX.
Okay.
The important part, it doesn't have a JavaScript framework. Like it's not React or Vue or Angular. And he claims he built his whole like course platform in it, and he's very happy with it. So I'm like happy that it's an option for people who want to do it. And, you know, it seems like there's a wave of anti JavaScript frameworks with this and Alpine.js and things like that. But just if you like Dreams of Code stuff, if you liked his interview with us or his videos, don't miss out on this one. It also explains why he hasn't been like on top of his release schedule recently, building his own content platform instead of just shipping some courses, which honestly I respect. Like building your own thing instead of picking something off the shelf when your thing is being an engineer. That like tracks on multiple levels. That does it for the lightning round. Let's move to a quick ad break. And after that, we have, like I said a million times already, an interview with Anton that I'm pretty jazzed about.
Shai, I am so excited. We have, as of right now, as of for this recording, 99,778 downloads of our podcast, which means that tomorrow, with the release of this episode you're listening to right now, we will hit 100,000 downloads.
Damn, that's cool. I'm wondering how many dishes that translates to. Because I think our podcast is the perfect podcast to do dishes with.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Because it's like you want to be concentrated. I don't want people to be driving and trying to imagine like, okay, weight groups and whatever, just to be imagining them veering into the second lane. But I think it's exactly like, because doing the dishes should take you about like 15 minutes, right? And then while we clean off, the ad break goes on. And then if you care about the interview, you can check that out. And if we're talking about 100,000 downloads, right? We have 100,000 downloads times 15 minutes. So it's 1.5 million minutes of just pure news, right?
Pure news.
How long does
No
it take
fluff.
you to wash like a single plate when you do the dishes?
I don't wash the dishes. I put them in the dishwasher.
I'm gonna Olga, my wife, if you're listening, stop listening right now. This is probably the most contentious point in our marriage.
Oh no.
You're holding a plate in your hand.
Yeah.
It's dirty. It has like stuff on it, like ketchup.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah.
Do you clean it before you put it in the dishwasher so the dishwasher
Ketchup?
doesn't get
No. If it has solid food on it, yes.
I clean it before I put it in the dishwasher with soap.
Then just put it in the cupboard. You don't need the dishwasher anymore.
I will die on this hill. It keeps the dishwasher working for longer, and the dishes come out clean.
Yeah, they come out clean because they go in clean.
Before you had a dishwasher, how long does it take to wash a plate? Like 10
Just a few
seconds?
seconds.
Nah,
Just a few seconds.
15 seconds.
Yeah, maximum.
We're talking about 22 and a half million plates washed.
That's a lot of plates.
Yeah. People need to eat. Thanks for downloading our podcast. It's so cool of you, everybody.
All right. What else can we talk about on this not ad break?
How can people reach us?
Yeah,
if
you
they
can
want
reach
to talk
us.
to us.
Yeah. Cupago.dev is the website where all the other links are. You can email us news@cupago.dev. You can find our Patreon there. Support us on Patreon. It helps to pay to produce a show. You can find us on Slack. We're the Cupago Slack on the Gophers Slack, Cupago channel on the Gophers Slack. We've got LinkedIn. We've got...
If you want to get technical, it's the Cupago channel on the Gopher workspace.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got really into Slack nomenclature when I worked at Reco because it was like AI protection on SaaS applications. And I found that nobody cares about whatever product managers decide to call things. Oh, these are channels, these are threads, these are workspaces. Nobody cares about these words. They're just going to call it the
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Anyway, get a hold of us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, you can email us at cupago.dev. That is at news@cupago.dev, And we love to get your emails as well. So far, they've been nice. Last thing we want to update you about before we jump to the interview is our 100th episode. So in just 2 weeks' time, we're planning to have our 100th episode celebration. It's going to be live. Live in the sense that you can join the recording. February 13th, right before Valentine's Day. We plan to do it at 8 p.m. Israel time, which is like 6 p.m. UTC. So I think most people in Europe could easily join. And if your morning is sort of free in the US, if you can get a bit later into work, or if you want to join from work, right, and grab a conference room and some coffee, bring some bagels, that could be cool if you're running the backend guild at work or something. Yeah, we're going to do news. We're going to go through a few proposals. We're going to try to keep it very opinion light and content heavy. And then instead of doing an interview, we're just going to do a live chat, open microphone, and we're going to have some questions and some fun stuff, maybe even some activities. We'll see what we manage to scrunch up. We really would like y'all to join us because we've been talking about the live episode forever. We really wanted to do it for a long time. And this show... I wouldn't go as far and as influency to say it wouldn't happen without y'all, but definitely wouldn't have lasted that long without like the community and all the interesting people that came on to interview and all the responses and the support we got. So we would really like to share this experience of like recording an episode with everybody. And if it's fun, maybe we'll do it like we don't have to wait 100 episodes to do it again, but let's try to do it once and try to do it right. Did we cover everything?
I think we did. I think we should get on to the interview.
To the interview mobile.
So, Shai, are you excited about Go 1.24?
I'm excited about it. Definitely, I saw.
Excited about reading all of the release notes, and that's probably all you're going to do, right? Just read the release notes.
Nah, man, I'm skipping all that. I read the source code and just try to understand what happened.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, no need to interact with it at all.
Nah, I read and I think I understand it. Why? Yeah. Do you have any other suggestions?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I've been doing the same thing for most of my programming career. I just read books about programming and call myself a programmer. I don't really do anything with it. But I've been wondering, maybe
that's why you find grammar problems in the.
Maybe I should try interacting with these languages. I wonder if there's any way we could, get some interactive, documentation. Maybe even release notes. That would be cool.
That sounds impossible. Anton, what do you think?
So anyway, Anton, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and thank you for your interactive release notes and all the other contributions you've made. Before we talk about those things, though, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name is Anton. I do some open source stuff, and I write interactive, maybe I can call them guides or books, and interactive articles on my blog. That's mostly what I do in my free time. So that's it.
These are calling them just interactive blog posts or guides makes them sound way less important than they are. I think they just gave a lot of people excitement about the new versions of Go, because now they can finally understand what it means. From like 1,000 comments on a discussion on like a proposal with super smart people that definitely understand what they're writing, but I don't. Hey, click run here and it's going to work. And actually, I wanted to ask you about this first. The interactive, like the little interactive windows you have on your site, that's your thing, right? It's not a different library.
Yes, that's right. That's actually one of my open source projects. So the idea behind it is very simple. I think that one of the most important things in technical writing, like blog posts or documentation, is examples. Because I think that we people generally learn best from examples and stories, because that's how our brain works. It's just wired to, to stick to examples and stories. And what can be better than just examples, only interactive examples? So that's what I think. So I've made this tool, which is a code sandbox, and also a tool for creating interactive examples in any kind of technical writing, like courses and blogs and things like that. And I use it personally all the time for my blog. And I try to encourage other people to use it without much success, unfortunately. But, well, I try.
Well, it's called Codapi. It's codapi.org. And definitely if you do any kind of technical writing, blog posting, I think specifically if you're like a development tooling company, right? If you have a library, your AI agent, blah, 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 all these sorts of things. And SDK generation companies, right? All these things, they always have code examples on their site. And I always don't believe the examples because they just look a little bit too perfect. And I'm like, it actually lowers my trust when I see code that I can't just copy into my editor because, the imports are missing or it has a tiny syntax error. My outlook on it would definitely change if I had these executable snippets on your site. So anybody here who listens and works in dev tooling, go check out the codapi.org. And these little snippets of like executable code are they are the way you build the interactive release notes, right? For every version.
Yeah, sure. That's what I do.
How long have you been doing the interactive release notes now that I think about it?
I think the first one was something for Go 1.20. It was not the full release notes. It was kind of, like cherry picks from Go 120. And I think the full one was for 1.22, 23, and now 24. So that's last 3 releases.
And do you know, I don't know, maybe you have analytics or something, how many people read these? I've seen them on every single feed of Go stuff that I'm a part of. Obviously, our own, but that's biased. But yeah. Golang Weekly and Golang Slack channel in the Slack workspace where Jonathan and I met, the Rands and Repose Slack, and in Twitter, and on the links in like Telegram. I've seen it every single place, on Reddit, the Golang Reddit, every single place that's a Go community. I've seen these interactive release notes. Do you know how many people actually read them?
I'm afraid not very many people read them. I'm afraid people don't read much at all. Usually what they do, they like it on social media. Sometimes they repost it, but I think very few people read such a long blog post. But I suspect that even less people read the official release notes.
That's probably true.
To the end. I mean, maybe they open them and read the beginning, but well, I'm not sure many people read them to the end.
If that's what we're saying, I'm guilty. I mean, with both your interactive ones and the official ones, I tend to skim the highlights. But like on yours, I've really enjoyed yours the last couple times, because although I don't read them top to bottom, I pick the ones I'm interested in, or in particular the ones I'm most confused about, and then your little examples are a great place to clear up that confusion, because I can, whatever the thing is, I can play with it and I can change the code around and I can hit run a few times. So I mean, I don't read straight through. I certainly wouldn't read straight through the release notes if it weren't for the show. I'd probably read them more thoroughly than I would otherwise for the show. But yeah, I read through to pick the things that are most interesting to me. I skim over anything about Mac OS or Windows. I skim over anything about libraries I don't use, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, when there's something confusing, your interactive release notes have actually helped me. For the last two releases, I think I was aware of it with 1.23 and then certainly 1.24. So thank you. Even if I don't read it clear through, it's still a valuable resource for me.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Does it work? Like the history of this show is basically we started it. Jonathan did some podcasts before. I'm like, this is my third podcast, but the main driving force behind doing this show is learning about Go and making sure we're like knowledgeable about what's going on, so we're better backend programmers or Go programmers. I feel like in order to write these release notes, you probably understand the release a lot better once you finish the blog post, right?
Sure. That's how it works, yeah. Best way to learn is to write about something.
Yeah.
Cool. Any specific things about 124 that were hard for you to like figure out and write about? Like, I don't know, synthetic times or directory scope or the cleanup stuff? Anything that like writing the example really gave you an like aha moment? They were like, oh, now I understand what this proposal actually means.
Well, I think the most confusing one was the one with test context, because I for a long time I didn't get why would we need a helper here. So you can just create a context and cancel it. And by reading the proposal and the comments below it, I understood that basically that's a kind of syntactic sugar, so to say. It's basically just the context which is attached to the test, which exists inside the test until the test completes. And then just before the test completes, it cancels. And it's just handy so that you don't forget to create a cancelable context yourself and defer cancel it. It's just a simple thing, but it took me some time to understand the logic behind it, because I think it was obvious to the person who proposed it, but it was clearly not obvious to me as I read it, and I read the comments. Somewhere in between the very long discussion, I finally find an example, just a small example of code that made me understand the point of the test context.
I think the best proposals, I definitely read a lot of proposals, a lot more than I should because of this show, right? Because I try to find interesting ones. The ones that don't include like an example, just like after the first few lines, they have a line of code that says, here's the problem, and here's after my proposal, here's the solution. The ones that don't include that, usually I need to read like 3 or 4 times. And then like 5 minutes before the show, I go to our ticket backlog and I switch the user from myself to Jonathan and like, oh no, you're explaining this one this week, not me, just to get out of it. So again, I just can't stress enough how cool the interactive release notes are. And I really hope that there will be a lot of content in Go 125. So you'll have a very cool interactive release notes then, because I already read the 124 one. Other than the interactive release notes, though, we mentioned at the top of the show that you were working like on a ton of stuff. I think the highlight is the Gist of Go book, right?
Yeah, that's currently the book I'm working on. It's Gist of Go concurrency. And the motivation for the book is it's similar to the other stuff I write. When I first learned Go concurrency, I read a book. It's it's a good book. It's actually it's a great book, but it was very difficult for me again to get through it. And when you read about concurrency primitives like channels and select and goroutines, it all seems easier, right? It's simple stuff. But when you try to understand how to really apply it, even in toy programs, it can be quite confusing. And usually the books, well, they don't help very much with that. So I thought about writing a book, very heavy on examples as usual. And of course, to make them interactive so that people can run them and change something and see how things change when you run more goroutines or introduce mutexes or remove mutexes and stuff like that. So that's what I'm working on currently.
And you're sort of halfway through it, right? It's not finished yet.
Well, yes, I have all the material, but I only published currently half of it. The first half is about the high-level concurrency primitives like select and coroutines and context. And the second half is more low-level stuff like synchronization, mutexes, and condition variables and stuff like that.
Very, very cool. Just to give our listeners a call to action, if you like the interactive release notes and you want to learn more about concurrency, they can pre-order it right now, right?
Yeah, sure. Just they can visit my website, which is antonz.org. And it's all there. All the books are available to read on the website. And if they want to support my work, sure, they can pre-order the book, or they can just read it for free on the website. It's also a possibility.
Is your technical writing your main source of income, or are you working as well? I'm sorry if that was already discussed.
My work with writing and the open source projects definitely is not a source of income. Well, it earns me some money, but not much. Yeah, I work for a commercial company. I program just
very good.
Just as a professional programmer. Well, I mostly program in Python, and yeah, that's it. Maybe 10% of my time I program in Go.
I don't want to sound too negative, but I hope you have more Go in your professional life as well.
Well, it's an interesting combination, like Python and Go. I think they complement each other pretty well because of how different they are. Yeah, it's so having both Python and Go in your tool belt, you can solve nearly any problem with the language which is best suited to the problem. Well, excluding, of course, the front-end stuff, which is another topic.
What I've found, I think it was yesterday, the person, I think it's called Charlie Marsh, said that they're going to release a Rust-based type thing instead of MyPy. And they already released a UV for instead of like poetry or pip. And they already released rough instead of black and isort and all these tools. So the moment the entire Python tool stack is going to be replaced with like native code, then I'll be happy to use it. But I've just spent so much time debugging people's virtual environments and debugging like stupid problems that Go doesn't have. My instinct is like Python, but obviously you're correct. There's different tools for different jobs. That makes a lot of sense. So we have all the content, we have the book, we have the interactive release notes. You certainly made a lot of people excited about the things that have been released. For sure, I'm like looking forward to the next releases just to know just because I know I'm more equipped to deal with what they bring. There is this notion of like modern Go 1 and Go 1.24 they look similar. They're not that different, but they are relatively different. how do you see that like difference in the future going forward? What are you excited about in like modern Go?
Well, it's an interesting thing. Just listening to, I think it was your previous episode, I heard about two of the proposals made by Jan. One about error handling, and another one is about Sync v2. So I think both are interesting examples of the current Go development. So basically, what I've discussed with Jan and what he added to the Sync v2 proposal after some additional discussion, is as I read it, basically every package which uses any is a potential candidate for v2 in the standard library. That's basically what he said, as far as I understand it. So I think in the years to come, we will see a lot more v2 packages with generics and iterators, which are two things the Go team seem to be very enthusiastic about. Personally, I'm not so much enthusiastic about these things, but I understand, of course, their position and how they see the language should evolve and the standard library should evolve. So I think the modern Go is, is going to introduce more and more generics, more and more iterators. I hope it won't introduce anything about error handling, because I think we should leave it alone. It is verbose, it is boilerplate heavy, but that is just the Go way. Go is verbose, and that's okay. And error handling is also verbose, but it's okay. I hope this won't change. As for other things, I think more generics, more iterators.
So more V2 to bring like generics and like things we agreed we can improve across everything. If we agreed we're doing generics and it's already in, do it for everything. But if we agreed error handling looks like this, keep it the way it is. Cool.
Yep.
Jonathan, what are you excited about in modern Go?
I'm actually excited about the new context and testing. I'm going to use that a lot. It'll. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it'll make my tests just ever so slightly less boilerplatey, I guess.
Nice. My thought process for such a question is so different. I was like, oh, what am I excited about in modern Go? Well, it's because it's all formatted the same. It has a slight edge in LLM code generation. So I really hope it becomes more popular because the code is better. The generated code is better because it uses tabs for white space versus spaces like Python. So it uses less tokens and these sorts of things. But honestly, the honest answer is that the thing I'm excited about in modern Go is the people working in it. Like I'm really excited to meet people doing cool stuff. Usually when you work in at least from the last 2 years, I felt that people who are attracted to this technology tend to have another quirk that's cool. The average Go programmer also have something cool that they do, whereas the average just backend developer that uses whatever languages their company had sometimes have less passion or depth. I'm really excited about more people getting into this language and getting to know them. And I think that leads us pretty well to our stumper question. So we talked about this at the beginning of the year, but the first year of doing the show, we asked people, what feature would you remove and what feature would you add? By the end of the year, we had 2 lists full of all the features, both to remove and to add. People want to remove all the features and add all the features. So we switched that question. Second year, we had, what was the question second year? I'm blanking.
What was the biggest surprise or challenge with learning Go?
Yeah, like when you learned what was very difficult for you. This year, we have a new question. Who was the person who influenced you the most in the Go community? Like when you think about Gophers, who do you think about? It could be like someone we know. It could be someone from work. It could be someone from university. Like it doesn't have to be a famous person, but we would be interested to hear who influenced you, Anton, in your Go development journey the most?
Well, I think I won't be very original here. When I learned Go, I read a lot the Go blog. I think it's a great source of learning materials and also the thinking behind the Go language, thinking of the people who created the language, who created the core SSTDLib packages. And I think a lot of blog posts were written by Rob Pike, at least in the previous years, not so much in the later years. So probably Rob Pike is the person from whom I learned a lot about Go, about what is, canonical Go, things that lay at the heart of the language and the philosophy, this kind of stuff.
Well, you're definitely original because I think you might be the first or second interviewee who's answering this question this year. So everybody else is copying you. Don't worry about it. Well, Anton, thanks a lot for coming on the show. We talked about the various links, and by the way, listeners, obviously all the links are in the show notes. Wherever you listen to this podcast, you can find them there. But just one last time, if people want to find you or your books or your open source stuff, where can they find you and where can they talk to you? It's
antonz.org and everything is there. All of my works and the links to all kinds of social networks. Everything is there. So that's it.
Cool. Thanks a lot for coming on. I can't wait to get the next interactive release notes. Maybe you think not a lot of people read them, but Jonathan and I do. And we very much enjoy doing that.
Thanks for coming on, folks. And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Program exited. Goodbye.